Let's now shift focus to other big story of the hour. An airstrike in a busy marketplace killed 43 and wounded several people in Ethiopia's war-torn Tigray. Victims were rushed to the regional hospital in Mekelle, and most of them were women and children. The United Nations has now demanded a probe into the strike. Secretary General Guterres has raised concerns over the unabated violence in the region.
The Secretary General is deeply alarmed by what he's seen, by the reports of civilian casualties on this airstrike, which reportedly took place yesterday in Togoga. We have requested access to the area to assess the situation and see how we can provide assistance. But so far, we've not been able to. The situation in the area remains very, very volatile. It's important that everyone engaged in fighting do their utmost to protect civilians, to obey international humanitarian law. Once again, we want to see an end to all hostilities in the region. We want to see greater access for humanitarian workers. And frankly, from what we've seen here, things are not going in the right direction, to say the least.
Victims were rushed to the regional hospital of Mekelle, and most of whom were women and children. Medical officers from Mekelle Hospital said that dozens have been killed in the strike. Unconfirmed reports from eyewitnesses state that the death toll is well over 50. The bloodbath comes amid ongoing vote counting in the Ethiopia presidential elections. Reports of rebel movements in parts of the northern region prompted the airstrikes. The Tigray region in North Ethiopia has seen a spate of violence. This due to an ongoing standoff between Ethiopian forces and the local rebels. General elections were withheld in the war-ravaged region earlier this month. Our correspondent Coletta Vanjohi is now joining us live from Abuja for more on this story. Coletta, welcome to Beyond. Give us some updates about this airstrike, the motive and casualties. We're of course getting reports that most victims were women and children.
Well, the reports that we have, I'm in Addis Ababa by the way, the reports that we have is that the airstrike happened on Tuesday, and the government, we have just spoken to the spokesperson of the Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who says that the airstrike was targeting what it calls combatants, and those are the forces loyal to the Tigray People's Liberation Front that the government is fighting in the northern region. And but reports on the ground say that some people have lost their lives, others have been injured. The number is yet to be really put out clearly, but we've also seen the military saying that its operations are not against civilians but against the forces loyal to the TPLF. So we're seeing the government denying on one side, the civilians on the other side saying that they have seen the damage and they themselves have been affected.
Right. Now, this airstrike comes during the vote counting of the presidential elections in the region, yet violence has continued unabated, with certain global bodies sounding an alarm now. What are authorities in the region doing about it?
Well, in the region, we know that within the northern region did not vote at all. There was no voting in the northern region of Tigray. So vote counting is not there in that region, so that wouldn't be affected. However, vote counting is going on in other parts of the country. After the vote, people went to the polls on 21st of June. But within the region, we know that the government has set up a transitional government, which is supposed to oversee the return to normalcy of the region. Now, with continued fighting here and there, then that means that the work of the transitional government is really tough. But we're seeing the government speaking tough and saying that the international community should be able to support the government in its fight against what it calls impunity and not just criticize. Well, the spokesperson of the Foreign Affairs Ministry says the same United Nations and other international communities is supposed to have talked a bit, at least, about the fact that Ethiopia was able to go through with elections despite the conflict, but instead the Foreign Affairs Ministry says they are condemning the government. But well, on the other side, we're seeing the United Nations and the European Union talking about human rights and the fact that it is a conflict going on. There is already a deteriorating humanitarian crisis there, and something needs to be done. So vote counting continues in other parts of the country as the government insists that it still has control over the northern region.
Right, Coletta, thank you so much for joining us from Addis Ababa at this hour and for all those updates.